Jazz was a genre that I came to relatively late in life. Growing up in the 1980s as a teenager, my musicality and my songwriting was really informed by the rock and pop music of the time. And the only jazz I really listened to was kind of the mainline jazz fusion of the 1980s. So bands like Spyro Gyra, Yellow Jackets, David Sanborn, and a whole bunch of jazz fusion guitarists, who all kind of sounded the same. Now, that jazz is something that I never listen to anymore. I actually find it really boring. But in terms of, kind of my discovery of what you might call classical jazz, I can date it to about 10 years ago, roughly, to these very dear friends of ours at the time who lived out on the North Fork of Long Island. And we used to go out there to visit them, and we would sit in their cottage, late at night and just talking and drinking wine and listening to music off vinyl. And a lot of their vinyl collection was jazz. And it really exposed me to a lot of stuff I had never heard. In fact, I remember being introduced to Art Tatum for the first time and just being completely blown away, of course, by how amazing he was. Now, Kind of Blue was an album that was in their collection, but we never listened to it out there. But I noticed it, and of course I recognized it. It's the most famous jazz album of all time. But I had never listened to it. And kind of inspired by those late night listening sessions from back then, eventually I came to feel, maybe I should give Kind of Blue a try. Maybe I should see what all the fuss was about. Now, my discovery of Kind of Blue was kind of critical to its inclusion in the Desert Island discs. And that's because, strangely enough, I never realized it wasn't a double album, which seems ridiculous, but it's because of the way I discovered it. When I went to listen to it, I just found it on a YouTube playlist, and the YouTube playlist just said Disc 1 and Disc 2. So I'm like, oh, a double album. And I listened to the whole thing, and it was surprisingly the stuff on the second disc that I found more immediately accessible. Now, I now realize that what I was listening to was the 2008 reissue of Kind of Blue, which included a second disc of bonus material. So the first disc is the super famous album, which is essentially modal jazz compositions, mainly by Miles Davis, but Bill Evans participated also. The second disc, though, is it's the exact same ensemble, same session, but it's more slanted towards kind of standards. So you have On Green Dolphin Street, you have Fran Dance, which is that's a Miles Davis composition. But then you have Stella by Starlight, it's a total standard. Love for Sale, which is a Cole Porter song. And then you have a different kind of alternate version of So What from the main album. And that's a live version that they put on. It was a performance in The Hague in 1960, which I'm going to come back to. So, basically, this is the album that's coming with me to the desert island. And I find that I can listen to these two albums back to back, over and over, all night long, and I will never get tired of them. They are endlessly fascinating. And there's something about the alternating of the super famous modal jazz album which is of course wonderful and amazing. And then the second discs, which are standards and other compositions, but they're in the exact same sound universe with the same amazing group of players that you had on Kind of Blue. So we're talking about Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, Bill Evans, Paul Chambers, and Jimmy Cobb. So Kind of Blue is an incredibly special album for me because it's amazing how much music it actually brought into my life just as a single album. How many musical vistas it revealed to me. And there were a couple key attributes that made it all happen. Now, one is the fact that it allowed me to kind of understand and appreciate John Coltrane. And the way it does it is you have the opportunity throughout both albums, both discs, to compare John Coltrane's soloing with Cannonball Adderley. Now, you can do this because, of course, on the main album, Coltrane is panned left and Adderley is panned right. And they each take a solo on every piece. So you're able to, within these very kind of fixed, sort of constrained modal compositions, you're able to hear how Coltrane approaches it and how Adderley approaches it. And this was my first revelation because when I listen to it, what I hear is Adderley sounds, I mean, it's beautiful, it's sophisticated, you know, it's lovely playing. And when I hear Coltrane, it's also beautiful and sophisticated, but additionally, it's also consistently surprising in a way that Adderley's playing is not. To me, when I listen to Adderley, his playing reminds me of a bunch of other saxophone players from the time. And when I listen to Coltrane, he doesn't remind me of anyone. I mean, from the time, you know, obviously he's an enormous figure in music, and going forward, he had an incredible effect on players. Everyone started copying him and was inspired by him. But he just sounded completely different. And it's actually an amazing attribute of Kind of Blue that this structure invites you to just compare these two very different approaches within composition after composition after composition. And I came to realize and love the fact that Coltrane just had this incredible vocabulary that was just so different. And that's one reason that you can do this same exercise with the bonus disc. Now, they didn't do the panning on the bonus disc, but it doesn't matter because once you've listened to this comparison enough, you can immediately identify John Coltrane. I mean, first of all, he's playing a different saxophone, but even if that's a bit too subtle, you can immediately identify him because his musical vocabulary is just so different than Adderley. And it was hearing this that, I mean, I'm not a saxophone player, but like I was able to kind of pick up and begin to understand his vocabulary and kind of get what he was doing as he played. And it led to, it gave me an in to be able to appreciate that guy, right? It's very easy to just say, oh yeah, Coltrane, he's a genius and all, but like why is he a genius? Why to an individual person is Coltrane a genius? I mean, what is it about his playing? Right, I was able to identify the kind of the lexicon that he was using to express his ideas, to like do what he was trying to do musically. And it was this comparison with Cannonball Adderley that made it possible. Now the other thing about Kind of Blue that helped me understand Coltrane was that final alternate version of So What on the bonus disc. And that, again, that was from a live performance. And it wasn't exactly the same ensemble. It was, Cannonball Adderley and Bill Evans weren't there, so it was like a bit of a stripped down like touring band or something. And they do a version of So What, but it's a very different version. It's much more up-tempo. And John Coltrane is like doing his John Coltrane thing, right? He just starts soloing and it just goes on and on and on. And in fact, the version of So What, this version, it's actually the way that he came to play it once he had his own really famous quartet. And in fact, on what's probably my favorite John Coltrane album from his quartet period, which is Impressions. The title song, Impressions, is actually just Miles Davis's So What, but he's doing it with his quartet, right? And Miles Davis is out of the way, right? So John Coltrane is free to just like go to town and just do whatever the fuck he wants. He can just go hog wild. I mean, it's totally fantastic. Well, he was doing kind of a preliminary version of that in this version of So What. And it kind of allowed me to just hear, you know, that aspect of his playing, those long, deep explorations in his solos. And I think it was very helpful to hear kind of the simpler solos that let you kind of get the lexicon, that let you get the Coltrane language. And then you have this one opportunity to sort of hear that language develop like in long form. It was very helpful, and basically it opened up his entire middle period, right? Which is my favorite period of John Coltrane. His main period with his famous quartet. And so all of that music just became accessible and fascinating to me. Now the other thing that it did is it eventually opened up his late period, right? His sort of off the wall, like free jazz period, where eventually, I mean, he started with the quartet, but eventually they kind of broke up and he just brought in more players and he went free. And I began to love that music, which in turn opened up all of free jazz for me. So I began listening to Ornette Coleman, who I must confess, Ornette still kind of eludes me a little bit, but I haven't given up on him. And it also led me to like the free jazz work of Peter Brotzmann, and eventually to the 1980s free jazz band Last Exit, which was, Peter Brotzmann was in that band along with Bill Laswell, and there was a guitarist named Sonny Sharrock who was in that band. Now Sonny Sharrock, he opened up yet another musical vista for me, because Sonny Sharrock was a really interesting guy. He was a free jazz guitarist in the 80s. So he was operating within a sound universe on the guitar that was a complete alternative to the kind of lightning fast modal shredding paradigm that just defined jazz guitar. And really, unfortunately, it came to kind of define like the de facto standard of guitar excellence, right? Just how fast and clean can you shred, which I always thought was just very, very unfortunate. And here was Sonny Sharrock, and I discovered him just doing something completely different on the guitar. And this is what kills me about like this, the fact that like guitar playing excellence has just become defined as modal shredding. It's so sad that you can do so many interesting things with the guitar. In fact, if you think about it, if you think about all the really cool sonic things that a guitar can contribute to a composition, like, at least in my mind, kind of the least interesting thing is shredding, right? Almost everything else is more interesting. And Sonny Sharrock was taking like a free jazz approach to what the guitar could contribute. So, I mean, this is, right up to this very moment, this is influencing me in the way that I think about my own guitar playing and my own compositions and what I want to do. It just opened up this whole other realm. Now, Kind of Blue also introduced me to the world of the pianist Bill Evans. And I have to say, like, the more I listen to Kind of Blue, the more I'm of the opinion that, like, Bill Evans is kind of the secret reason that it's so amazing. He just holds those compositions together so elegantly and beautifully, but in a way that is like almost invisible, right? It's not flashy playing at all. It's just perfectly judged playing. And he came to be a favorite, and now many Bill Evans albums are in regular rotation in my house. And I feel kind of sad that I can't include an album of Bill Evans on the desert island, but you know, hey, I can only have 10. And I think that listening to Kind of Blue, it kind of captures a lot of what is so magical about Bill Evans. Just that one album is able to capture quite a bit of it. So in that regard, I guess I don't feel too bad that Bill Evans needs to be left off. Okay, so the last thing I want to point out about Kind of Blue, and this is just a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but I'm really not a big fan of bass solos in jazz. The sound of a double bass soloing, it just sounds kind of ridiculous to me. Like it's not interesting. It sounds weird. And I'm not saying, I understand, I get why they want a solo. Everybody wants to do a solo, right? Soloing is really fun. But I just think it sounds kind of bad. And honestly, like drum solos in jazz are really not that much better. And so I really appreciate that Miles Davis just kind of omitted bass and drum solos from Kind of Blue. They just don't happen. And that's great. That works fine for me. I have no problem with that whatsoever, that being omitted. So just in another way, it's just kind of another just remarkable thing about Kind of Blue that I enjoy. Those compositions aren't marred for me by, you know, some weird sounding bass solo that goes on and on and on. Oh man, what can I say about Kind of Blue? I mean, it's just, when I think about it, it's astonishing how much music that one album brought into my life, how much it sort of opened me up to music and enabled me to appreciate so many new things in music just by listening to that one album and its bonus disc, of course. And I believe that in the original BBC radio program, Desert Island Discs, I think that they're actually asked at the very end to pick one, at least sometimes, to pick if it was only one that you could bring to the desert island. And I have to say, I'm pretty sure that in my case, the one would be the 2008 reissue of Kinda Blue.